Hello and welcome to this week's work in Statistics 1. Uh, for this week, we're taking a step aside from working with measures of central tendency and measures of variation like mean, median, and standard deviation. And we're going to take a look at an area of statistics that is probably intuitively one of the areas that most of us are very comfortable with on the surface, but we're going to take a deep look at the statistics used. For example, I have here on the little home screen a scatter plot that compares state test scores towards versus SAT scores for students. It's a hypothetical situation, but my point is this. Most of us are pretty accustomed to taking a look at this chart and seeing that, okay, this data tells me that there is a relationship between the ninth grade test scores for students on the state assessment and their eventual SAT scores. And I can see that as the students who are stronger on the state test tend to also be stronger on the SAT score, and the students who are a bit weaker on the state test are weaker on the SAT scores. So there is a relationship here. And we're going to take a look at what's called the correlation coefficient, which is a statistic that helps measure that relationship. We're also going to take a look in Chapter 7. How do you take this scatter plot and come up with a line of best fit, which is called a least squares regression line, which is a complicated statistic to find, but again, in the big picture, pretty easy to understand. We're going to come up with a line and a formula that is going to help us make predictions on future students. Or, for example, if we have a student who scores an 800 on the ninth grade standardized test, what score can we expect them to achieve on the SAT score? And you can look at this grid here and make a prediction, but we're going to come up with a formula that's going to help us quantify that prediction even better. So there's a lot of material here. Again, intuitively, I think it's relatively, I don't want to say easy, but something that you're used to doing. But as far as the actual statistics, it is a bit of a deep dive. I would read these two chapters carefully and take note of the vocabulary. What I did put together was this. There are a few items in Chapter 6 and 7 that I'd like you to submit, 5 items in all. I did put together a screencast called Correlation Coefficient Computation, which is designed to A, help you understand what is actually going on in finding the correlation coefficient, but also how we can use Excel to help us to calculate this. So I highly recommend you taking a look at that screencast. The second part is for you to actually use Excel to produce correlation coefficients and line of best fits or regression lines. So Excel is a pretty handy tool for this. A lot of times in our work we have information on Excel, and I want you to be able to learn how to use Excel as a tool for you. So there are screencasts here to help you. There's also a link here to the Excel file that has the data. And this is the next step in that set of data that we had that we used previously. I added SAT scores now, and you'll see it's on the second tab when you open that up. If any of you have any questions with this, let me know. And again, I encourage you to use the Slack discussion space, work together on this, collaborate, and I'll chime in too when needed. And then the third part, which I want to remind you of here on this front sheet, is I'd like you to go into the Slack discussion space and share some of your findings from your annotated bibliography. If you recall, we extended the annotated bibliography due date to March 19th, along with the assignments here. So we have basically 4 things due on March 19th, but hopefully you had most of the month to do it. You have your annotated bibliography is due on the Slack discussion space. Comments from you about your findings are due. The 5 items from the text are also due. And lastly, the Excel activity from Part B of the Excel activities there is due as well. So there's a lot of information. I'm posting this early, so hopefully you have time to do it. And if you have any questions along the way, feel free to ask. Thank you.